welcome to today's tutorial on the topic of data evaluation. So this is a companion notebook for MT quality evaluation at document level. So we do have two notebooks, one at basic level and one at advanced level, to evaluate your data at sentence level. And in those notebooks, we also introduce various automatic evaluation metrics, two string matching ones called BLEU and TER, and two embedding-based metrics called BERTScore and COMET. And I would recommend you to have a look at these basic, either at the basic or the advanced or both notebooks previously to running through this notebook, because there we do explain in a lot of detail these metrics and how they work and how they can be ranked. Because in this notebook we won't go into any of that detail of how about the theory of these metrics. We will simply run through this notebook and calculate metrics at document level so that you know how that works, because it is very relevant to calculate metrics not just at a sentence level. That is interesting to know, because it is interesting to know how the metrics work, the functionalities of the metric, but in practice we would most likely work with entire documents, so text files, to calculate an average score for the entire file. So something that's really important here is that we're working with text files, not with Word documents or anything else. So if you do have a Word document, I would recommend you to go to your Word document and go to Save As and save it as a text file, so .txt, or otherwise copy the content into a text file, into an editor, to save it as a text file, because we are working with text files here. If you would open your Word document here, it would not work. And if you, for example, did the NMT training notebook and you created your own translation from your own NMT model, that translation that you will have created will also be a text file. So you can also call on that file and calculate average scores in this notebook. So first of all, we will look at an example here where we will provide you with documents, and then I will show you how you could do this for your own documents as well. Alright, so the first step is once again that we will upgrade pip to have the latest pip installed. And then this section here is the one where we will evaluate different notebooks, different documents. So I will show you that step later on, but first of all, we will run through the rest of the notebook with our example text that we've provided. Alright, so once we have pip installed, we can move on to the next section. So first of all, we will clone our GitHub repository, because that is where we have the text files saved for you. You can also have a look here by opening this link to a GitHub repository in a folder of learning resources and quality evaluation. You will see a folder with example texts. So these are the three texts that we will be working with. You can either download them here or even open them here, and you will see the content of these texts. So this is from a legal translation class. And then you can also look at the NMT hypothesis. This is the one from the machine translation. And you can also look at the source text. So we can see this is kind of, this is a contract, and we are working from English, from the source, into German. The reference and hypothesis are both German. So we can change our directory to this folder straight away, that we can call these files straight away. So you can either look at the files the way I just showed you in our GitHub, or you can also look at them locally here by going into the same folder of quality evaluation and example texts. And these are the files here. We have them here on the side. And by clicking on the three dots here on the side, you can also download them locally. Alright, so first of all, we will assign some variables to these files so that we can check the length of these files. And we can see that the length is 16 for all of them. So we're working with 16 sentences, 16 lines in each file. And it is very important that they are all of exact same length, because the metrics are calculated per line. So per segment, we will have one metric, one score calculation. And if they would have if these files would have a different number of lines, we would get an error. So we wouldn't be able to calculate our scores. So it is very important to always check that the files are of exact same length. Once we have done that, we can go and calculate our first score. So first of all, we will calculate BLEU. So once again, we will have to import our BLEU functions, and we will, as previously, calculate the sacreBLEU implementation. And now we can simply run this line right here to calculate our BLEU score. And we can see here that we're calling our sacreBLEU function. We're referring to the human translated reference and our machine translated hypothesis. We want to see the metric BLEU. We only want to see the score, so nothing more, no more calculation. And this here with 2 shows us that we see 2 decimal places. And this is the final BLEU score, sacreBLEU score that we get of 34.69. Once again, if you want to know how these scores are interpreted, I recommend to look at the basic or advanced level notebooks on data evaluation. Once we've calculated BLEU, we can move on and calculate TER. And once again, we can just run this line here. And this time, we can use the sacreBLEU package as well to calculate TER. And once again, we're referring to the reference and the hypothesis, but this time we're referring to TER here. So up here, you could see that we wanted BLEU. So this shows us that we were calculating the BLEU score, but here it shows us that we're calculating the TER score. So once again, we can just run this code and we get a value of 56.8. So just by running these 2 lines, we can calculate an average score of our texts for BLEU and TER. And then we can move on to BERTScore. We need to install our BERTScore package. So you just run this code. And once again, it takes a little longer to install the embedding-based ones. Once we have installed that, we can simply run this line. So here again, we're calling out BERTScore. We're inputting our reference and our hypothesis sentence files. And we are referring to the German language because both our reference and hypothesis files are German. If you were working with a different language, if they would be English, for example, you would need to change this to the English language code. Or for example, for Spanish, it would be ES. So you need to make sure that you're using the exact language of your files. But I will change it back to German because we are working with German files here. And this takes a little longer again in comparison to the string matching ones because these are embedding-based metrics. So it's first downloading what it needs, and then it will print 3 values. It will print the precision score, BERTScore, the BERT recall score, and a combination of the 2, the BERT F measure score. And the value that we're interested in is the F measure score because that is our final BERT score. And it will also be an average of the entire document. And we can see them printed out down here. So we get a precision value of 0.87, a recall value of 0.869, and then a combination of the 2, F measure score 0.87. So this is the final BERT score that we're interested in for our document. Now we can go and also do the same for COMET. So once again, we can install our COMET package, and we will use Cometinho as a lightweight model here because it loads faster. So once again, this takes a little longer to load because it is an embedding-based metric. And then we can go down here and simply run this line. And what is different in comparison to BERTScore and the other scores above is that now we're also calling our source. So we're working, this metric works on a multilingual basis. So it takes the English source, the German hypothesis, and the German reference to calculate a score for the hypothesis. And here we're choosing our model, so we can see that we're working with the Cometinho model. And in this aspect here, it was first of all downloading the model, downloading the Cometinho model. And once again, it takes a little longer because it is an embedding-based metric. And here we will see, in comparison to BERTScore and the other scores above, we will see a score for each segment in a moment. And we will also receive one average score for the entire document. So this is our final average score right here at the bottom, the NMT hypothesis score. So our average score, average continuous score for the entire file is 0.61 almost. And these are our individual scores for the individual sentences. So we have 16 lines and it starts counting at 0. So we go from 0 to 15. And these are our 16 individual scores for all of our sentences. And then this is our average continuous score down here at the bottom. And we can do the same for quality estimation. So this is our quality evaluation score up here. And we can do the same for quality estimation, where we're also calling on our source and our hypothesis, but not on a reference. So this time we are just estimating a score. And for this, we're using the COMET quality MQM model that we're calling here. And this takes a little longer because it has to download the model first. And this is not a lightweight model, so it takes a little longer to download. And I will just pause this video as it's loading. All right, so that took around 3 minutes to load, so don't be surprised if it takes a little longer to load. And we can see here, once again, we get one specific score for each sentence and then one average score. So 0.12 is the average quality estimation score that we get for our entire document. So that's already it. Now you have, with just a few lines of code, we have calculated average scores for BLEU, TER, BERTScore, and COMET for entire documents. And those were little documents, short documents that we've provided for you. You're also welcome to test this out with your own data. And if you're not interested in that, you can end the video here. But if you would like to find out how to evaluate scores for your own documents, for example, if you have done the NMT training module and you would like to evaluate your translation here, then this is would be interesting for you. So I can just look at what we have down here. So in order to do so, you can either upload the files locally here, you could upload them in here by just dragging and dropping them, or by clicking on this icon up here, and then you can call them by the file name if you do it locally. I would recommend to do it via Google Drive, so as we've done in previous notebooks before as well, where we connect to a drive and then call our files directly from there. So this line here, this code will connect to Google Drive as we've done before. And then down here we can change the directory to the folder where you have your files. So you would need to actively change the name of this. I will give you an example with my data. So for example, I have from the TED 2020 data set, I have an hypothesis, a reference, and a source file. Okay, and they are in this folder called Files Document Level, which in turn is in this folder called Quality Evaluation, which in turn is in the DataLitMT folder. And make sure that your names don't have any spaces in between, so always are connected with an underscore, for example. So I have to change the name here. So I would go and say DataLitMT / quality underscore evaluation / files underscore document minus level. Make sure it's the exact same spelling. And then you can just run the cell. And as you've done previously, probably, you will have to connect to your Google Drive. Then you have to select your account and go down here to click Allow. And then your notebook can connect to your Google Drive. And it will also change the directory straight away to the folder where you have your file saved. So make sure you're using your folder. And then we see here that these 3 files are the one that we want to work with now. We have the reference, the hypothesis, and the source. And once again, as good practice, and to make sure that this will work, let's check that these files have the same length. All right, so now here, which is kind of the same code as below, we have to fill in your reference name. So you copy the name of your reference file and you paste it in here. And the same for your hypothesis. You copy the name of your hypothesis file and you save it in here. And for your source, you copy the name of your source file and you save it in here. And then you can run the cell and it will print out the length of the files. And we see down here that all files have the same length, which is great. They have a length of 35,000 sentences, 35,000 lines. So the calculations of the scores will take a lot longer here than they did previously, where we only had 16 lines. But this is very realistic if you are translating using an NMT model that you've trained yourself for the files to be a bit longer. All right, so I have copied the calculations up here. So make sure that all your packages are still installed, as we've done below. Otherwise, do so in the sections for BLEU, for BERTScore, and for COMET, because we need to have the packages installed. And then we always have to refer once again to our reference and hypothesis. So go back and copy the name of your reference and copy it in here. Make sure you don't copy any extra spaces or any extra characters. It has to be exactly the same. And then copy your hypothesis in here. And then just run the cell. And then we can calculate the sacreBLEU score, the average sacreBLEU score for this file. And you can already see that it takes a little longer than it did previously. And we get an average BLEU score of 23.28. And this is the translation that I created also with the NMT model, with the demo model that we did. So you might get something similar if you're also using that translation. Then we can also calculate TER. So once again, we need to copy our reference file, paste it in here. Once again, make sure it's correct and we don't have any extra spaces or anything. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. And then we can load it here. And this one will now take a few minutes to load. So I will just pause the video and come back to you. All right, so this took around 3 minutes to load, as you can see down here. And we get a TER score of 67.39 for this, this hypothesis text. And once again, we won't go into interpretation of the values here. So this is how you can calculate your sacreBLEU value and your TER value for your own texts. And you can do the same to calculate the BERTScore and the continuous score and the quality estimation score. You would only have to substitute your reference here, your hypothesis here, and the same here, your hypothesis and your reference and your source for the COMET scores, which I won't do at this point because the file I have is very long with the 35,000 words, so it would take a very long time to compute these average scores. So depending on the files you have, if they're a lot shorter, then it will be doable. If they're very long, then it would take quite some time, and it takes it could take even up to a few hours to load. So just that you're aware of that. You could also change your runtime to GPU. So right now I don't have any GPU selected. So you could also select GPU if you're working with very large files, because then the computation would be a lot faster. So these I will leave up to you to test with your own documents. I've showed you how to upload and connect your own documents, and then how to calculate these values and how to substitute the names here, the variables, and then you're welcome to test it out for your own documents. So congratulations, once again, you have completed a notebook and have learned how to evaluate the quality of your machine translations at document level.